day 2 of the February 05 7-day retreat in Springwater. Until a few seconds ago, I couldn't, for the life of me, remember what did we discuss last night. But then at least one question occurred, and that was referring to a previous talk that somebody heard on tape, in which I'm talking about different grades or degrees of awareness. So, since this comes up a lot of the time, we will start with that. It's actually not correct. I don't know what I said at the time, but there are not different degrees of awareness, but there are different thicknesses of overlay, of cloudiness. When there's a lot of overlay, we've been calling it that recently, meaning all the conditioned remembrances and images and desires and fears, to the degree that this is heavy and thick, there is very little awareness shining through. It's not that there is a low degree of awareness, but there is a lot of clouds. Like today, there's a lot of clouds. Shadows or fog, mist. And when that mist begins to lift, or on the West Coast in San Francisco they talk about burning up. When it burns up, well then there is the sun. The light, the clarity. And then another sort of kind of awareness that had been mentioned in this talk, and we again went over it last night, is what I called sort of a parallel running of awareness and conditioning. In other words, one is very much occupied with something that just happened. Somebody said something which was very irritating, hurt my feelings, damaged my image, at least what I think my image is in the eyes of others, and I want to preserve that at all cost, how others think of me. So there is this hurt image proceeding, progressing. More things come up, what the person said and maybe what I had now remembered other people said. I'm using this as an example. I'm not referring it to something particularly, that has just happened here. It's, I think, an example that everyone can relate to. The mind going over and over and over what happened, the nerve of this person to say this, or the emotions that are triggered, both anger and fear that this will spread. Now other people will hear about it, will also think badly about me. People will talk to each other about me in a way that I do not like. So, and yet there's awareness of that. It's not running totally in the dark. There is awareness of it. And yet one has heard in talks, and maybe it has happened to one, that if there's really very strong attention given a conditioned response, like hurt, and thinking about that hurt, and it's getting stronger, that if enough attention is given to that, or enough awareness is mustered this is how it feels, then this will go away. The hurt will diminish. It will become less painful, sort of like the fog burning up. But one finds that's not the case. On the contrary, I'm thinking more and more about it, and the thing gets thicker. The hurt does not burn up. And yet there's awareness. How is that possible when you, Toni, or other people say what comes in awareness and is brightly seen loses its sting, loses its power? Well, it's really not for somebody else to tell us what should happen. This is the trouble, that we hear too much of what should happen and then we expect it and it doesn't happen, and then we're disappointed or angry, frustrated. Watch it and watch what keeps a hurt alive when it ought to be going away with attention given to it. Because one may have experienced that incident too, that looking at it very intensely, it sort of dissipates in the looking, in the watching, in the wondering about it. There is a diminishing of the hurt and an increase of awareness. It seems as though they were trading energies. The hurt energy is given to the seeing energy. There's more seeing and therefore less hurt and less going over it. But then at times it doesn't work this way, and one is upset over it or wonders why it is not working. So it's okay to bring it to a question period. This is what fuels and feeds the question periods. But the most important thing is always that you watch it for yourself too, not just put it in an envelope and mail it or bring it here, but watch it by yourself very carefully. And formulating a good question is almost the main part of this inquiry. Formulating a good question, like, why does this keep intensifying? What keeps the fire going? And here, the fire meaning the fire of hurt. Instead of dissipating, it keeps growing. Why? And the question having been asked, now you have to watch. We have to watch, alone or together. And it can become quite obvious very quickly that thinking more about it, sort of gathering more opinions about it, is the fuel. I tell it to other people, and usually I pick people who will agree with me, who will help fuel that fire. Also agree with me how insensitive it was of so-and-so to say that or to do that. And the more agreement I get from others, the more the fire, the flames are kindled. And the neat thing is that the opposite works too. The less I talk about it and carry it, as Rilke says, carry it among the people. Just look at it for oneself rather than carrying it among the people to share it. The less oxygen there is for this fire. It may die down. Or how do we go over it? Or how does the brain go over it? Does it seek arduously to prove that I was right and the other person was wrong, looking for arguments of rightness, righteousness. The brain is very good at that. It's sort of going into the field and gathering the fruit, the berries, the corn of what I did was right and what I said was right and the other person was wrong. And this keeps the hurt going. So there's no need to blame it on weak awareness, but watch what the words in the brain say, how they support the hurt. It's amazing. It's a wonderful discovery trip. One can do all by oneself, or we can find different kind of allies, either those who will help in nurturing the hurt, or those who will help to say, look here, there is another train of thought that kindles the fire. And is it necessary to gather these trains of thought, or is it not only not necessary, but it is exactly what keeps the hurt going, which I want to be done with? So there's this real conflict. I want to get done with the hurt, and yet I'm gathering stuff that will keep it going. How crazy we are, or the brain, to remain right, to remain in the right, to be astonished by its shenanigans, you could say, and not take sides, just wonder like a research scientist gathering evidence for a certain hypothesis. A hypothesis is, do I or do the thoughts that the brain gathers accumulate or help to keep this fire going? Let's see. Let's watch it. So now, what was the third one? Or the third one was, wasn't it, that there's no awareness at all. I'm like in a tunnel. There's no light at all, just hurt and no awareness. It is dark. I guess this is not quite appropriate to count this as one of the stages of awareness, but we're free to manipulate our words and categories. Or was there one that I have forgotten? Who brought it up? But the most perplexing one to people is why, if there is awareness of the incident, looking at it, wondering about it, why doesn't it end? And this question has to remain open until there is a diminishing setting in. And the diminishing of the hurt does set in to the extent that the clouds dissipate, the clouds of proving that I'm right, the clouds of meanness that support this meanness. My argument, my position. So then sometimes the question comes up, well, what is attention? Is that also a synonym for awareness? We talk about paying attention or giving this matter our full attention. The way it feels, and the way it is often put, is that there is a strong actor in this attention giving. This is how it's put. I give attention, I pay attention. And we were told in school, pay more attention. They were constant admonishments. You're not giving enough attention, which solidifies this conviction that there is a me, an actor, who is either very attentive and therefore praiseworthy, gets a lot of reward for it, verbally or in notes, or a person who is inattentive, frazzled. The mind is all over the place. Well, actually, we are questioning in this meditative inquiry, we're questioning this whole existence of the I, of the me, as an agent, as a doer, an independent actor. We're questioning that. You could say, well, there is one, I know it. Well, then let's question it together and alone. Whether this is a monumental illusion, that in this body here sits a director, or like in a streetcar, a conductor who directs or at least a streetcar has tracks. It doesn't have a lot of freedom to go here or there unless it jumps the rail. Well, that's an accident. But it's such a deep conviction in human beings that there is a me that is free to decide, free to do and free not to do. We've been told this since the day of birth. All of our communication, dialogue and discussion is you and me. You put more attention to this, put more effort into your work. There's constantly the reference to somebody who does this. This whole thing of attending, awaring. I'm using the word awaring to get a little bit away from the doer, but it sits in there someplace, doesn't it? So it is for each one to come clear of the truth of these words, whether they really depict the true situation, or is there just an incredibly complex, ongoing in this brain of thoughts running all over the place, sometimes in unison, in agreement with each other, or very often in conflict with each other. Thoughts carrying desires, fears, messages, do this, don't do that, with considerable power, considerable energy. One can become more familiar, acquainted with a thought like that the whole me structure is nothing but a complex running of thoughts, either together in harmony or in disharmony. And each line of thought carrying a lot of power, a lot of energy, and usually the one thought train that has the strongest motor, the biggest power, wins out over those that are weaker. And then we say, I decided not to go this way. I decided not to smoke anymore. But in truth, if it's carefully observed and watched, something won out in this argument to do or not to do. Some thought train or a bundle of thought trains carrying more conviction. So why is this a tremendous attachment to this me entity? To really, by observing it day in, day out, night in and night out, the unbelievable depth of conviction that there is such a thing as a me that decides, that has free will. We think that, don't we? Or have we gotten away from that train of thinking? To work with this is really wonderful, and then bring it to a group dialogue, so we can bring to light all the various convictions and the depth to which we believe in this, and the depth to which we are willing to defend this structure, this me structure, because there's a tremendous identity or identification with it. This is me and my convictions. And if you begin to doubt this or take it apart, you're taking me apart, you're attacking me physically. I can feel it, people will say. I feel hurt or diminished. So, will we examine this? Are we interested in this? You may wonder, well, why? What's the use? So what? So there is one or there isn't one, but what is the practical advantage? What's the practical advantage of looking at this and of sort of maybe solving this riddle? People may feel it isn't even a riddle for them. There is a me. I do have freedom of choice. But isn't all of our conflicts reduce back to this conviction that not only do I have this freedom, but you have this freedom of choice. And if you only would have a little bit more insight, you would see how wrong you were. This is how we talk diplomatically, it's called, to heads of state and state departments and defense departments, always trying to convince the other that my choices are the right ones, and yours are darkened, how do you say, befuddled, confused, or, well, all the stuff we attribute to each other. You do this to get other self-benefits, and not me, but you. So the conflict of our life and living together on this small earth always comes back to the identification with a me person, a me clan, a me country, a me continent, a me group of nations. The European nations and the Arab nations, it's always identification with a group and the defense of it, to the point of killing those who don't belong and don't agree. It's so much at the root of our difficulty or impossibility of living together, that the clearer it gets, the more important it becomes to solve this riddle, this conundrum or this koan. What is this me? What is free choice? Is there such a thing? We can spend time here to really go into it with a bright mind, or at least a mind that brightens with time and with willingness to open up and freely. to look freely, to have that possibility of insight into the truth of how much we are steered by conditioning, what we call conditioned responses. Responses that have been rewarded, not because they're right, but because they were rewarded with, well, for wars, it's the acquisition of property, of land, of money, of women, gathering up women and people for slaves. A big booty there coming out of wars, the booty of people and children today, a lot of trade in children. And what is at the root of it all? Not just to engage and in assigning blame, but in saying why do we act the way we do, and sort of not pointing the finger elsewhere, but wondering, how does this come to pass, and could I do the same thing, or am I participating in this? It's a wonderful thing to find that what we blame others for can be found in ourselves. Then there is a possibility for compassion and understanding among us. I read someplace in one of these journals that come to us, only an enlightened Buddha is capable of seeing his own fault. It makes you think, is the person screwed up? Only an enlightened person is capable of seeing their own fault, how they are, how did we call it last night? Implicated. All of us implicated in what's going on in this world. And at the root of these implications is this identity with a me. Such power, tremendous power over our actions, over our thinking, over our emotions, over who we choose as friends or think we choose as friends. There's no such thing as free choice. It is all determined. And if we get together to trace the lines, it's marvelous to do this together and say, yes, this is really why I feel attracted to this person, because I feel support in what I think is right, namely me. So how did we start all this? Because of wondering what we talked about last night. The three kinds of awareness. The parallel running, awareness of what's going on, and yet that thing keeps on going. It will not stop. So, there, as a hint, can we give up? Is it possible to give up this desire that something will stop just because I'm looking a little bit? Not want it to change, but want to understand it. Let that be our foremost goal, to understand, to really see it working in ourselves and in others. And leave the resolution to the thing itself. Whether it will resolve or not depends on the degree of clarity with which we look. And the degree of clarity depends, does it not, on the degree of ego involvement. If there's no ego involvement, there's a lot of clarity. But when this ego wants to be right, then the clouds move in. And please don't take anybody's words for it, but take the words and watch them in action in yourself, in our relationship with each other, so that we can learn how it really happens with our relationships. It's marvelous to be able to watch ourselves and each other. And let the clouds of ego involvement or ego identification dissipate. I don't have to identify with anyone. All I want to do is see clearly what is happening. Like on a board, a game board. This move led to that move, and that led to this one, and then this one was taken out of the game, and here it's all clear. Don't have to speculate. We'll watch it alone and together. And if things weren't clear or got more confused than it was before, please make a note of it and bring it to the group, because it is a wonderful forum for bringing up your doubts, spelling them out, learning to spell it out more clearly, and learning to listen without attacking. Or discern the desire to attack and wonder, does that have to be happening, or does it bring darkness, this desire to attack someone, and yet give it credit when it's strong, not deny it. And if it is seen to be strong and not denied, then there's already the first step has been taken. First step into clarity about ourselves and each other. We will end here for today.